Joining us right now in studio, Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch. Tom, welcome back. Always good to have you here.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, so the big news yesterday, Jeff Sessions being fired by the president, asking to resign, which is a nice way of saying being fired. What effect does this have on the Kavanaugh investigation? The Mueller investigation. Everyone wants to know.
We don't know. The big change is that Rod Rosenstein is no longer supervising the Mueller investigation because he took over the position of acting attorney general, and Rod Rosenstein had been acting attorney general because Sessions had to recuse himself. Well, that's not an issue anymore. So the new acting attorney general is Mr. Whitaker, who had been Sessions' chief of staff for a bit now. So there's some stability in theory as a result of Whitaker being moved up. But I don't know what his view is on Mueller's investigation. Should it be allowed to run its course like a virus, or should it be shut down, as I suggest, because it's abusive and unconstitutional? We'll see. My guess is there'll be a mix where he'll try to rein him in a little bit while allowing him to finish up.
Well, he did say that this investigation does have parameters, and he is overrunning the parameters of the investigation, and that can't be. And so that's what the left is screaming about now, saying that he needs to recuse himself because he has an opinion on the investigation, because apparently you're not allowed to have a legal opinion of something if you're a lawyer.
That's right. Lawyers and all of us have a lot of opinions coming into positions like this, but you're not able to follow up on them the way you might want to when you're put into the position to make decisions, as now Mr. Whitaker is as deputy attorney general, as acting attorney general. Yeah, look, my view is the Sessions Attorney Generalship was a huge disappointment in terms of transparency and government accountability. They protected institutionally the Justice Department from inquiries on corruption. They thought they were above the law in terms of not answering to Congress or the president. Whether Sessions is personally responsible for that, maybe not, because he recused himself on some of these Russia investigation issues, but because he did recuse himself on these Russia investigation issues, which was the issue of a generation for the Justice Department. He kind of took himself out of a major issue related to the Justice Department or a major component of the Justice Department. That's why the president was frustrated. He hired him, and within a few weeks, he says, I'm recused from an issue important to the president. The president has a right to Attorney General he has confidence in, and he didn't have confidence in Attorney General Sessions. And it was an unfortunate situation that resulted in his leaving right after the election.
It's got to be a bizarre relation. Now the Justice Department has declared yesterday that all of the activities of the Justice Department are under directly the purview of the acting attorney general, Matt Whitaker, which is a very clear implication that the Mueller investigation is now his to oversee. It's got to be a strange relationship now between him and Rod Rosenstein, and I wonder what that must be like now for those two men, because Rod Rosenstein kicked off the Mueller investigation, and now he has to hand over control. I mean, don't you think that, Rod Rosenstein has had to have predicted this firing for some time, probably is prepared for it in some way?
Oh, yeah. Once he saw, because Whitaker's name being acting attorney general was broached a few weeks ago, and I'm sure he knew sooner than that, further back than that, he saw the writing was on the wall. Rod Rosenstein is a political person, and my guess is he'll be okay with this, but who knows? And it really doesn't matter, because Rosenstein, in my view, was conflicted in his handling of the Mueller investigation, because Mueller was investigating an issue that Rosenstein endorsed, which was the removal of Comey as FBI director.
Yes.
So it's something that Rosenstein should have been able to predict. And look, according to the New York Times today, Rosenstein and other folks at DOJ, deep staters, it sounds like, don't trust Whitaker because they think he's a White House spy. To me, that encapsulates why Whitaker should be acting attorney general. It's a kind of a after-the-fact endorsement, but shows you the arrogance.
It's like he thinks he works for the president.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you want to show what the problem at the DOJ is, you have these people who think they all should see themselves as, quote, White House spies because they all work for the president of the United States.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there's some.
This is the opposite.
Are there any WMAL spies here in the studio?
Yeah.
I would hope so.
Well, it's interesting because, I keep hearing over and over again, well, he's supposed to oversee, he's supposed to be independent. He's supposed to be, the head of the Justice Department, so he should be independent and unfettered by constraints of the president. But it's funny how they didn't feel that way with Eric Holder and Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Well, that's an unconstitutional approach to the Justice Department. Justice Department is an executive branch agency directed by the President of the United States. It's not a fourth branch of government. And now we're going to have, and I'm glad that we're at least, I think, going to take some steps to rein in this rogue agency.
All right, we're going to talk more with Tom Fitton in a moment. We're actually going to share with you, Tom, our interview with Matt Whitaker last year. He gave us some insight into what he thought of James Comey and the investigation into the president coming up. Okay, we got Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch here.
Yes, we do.
Asking a bunch of questions about what do we think of Jeff Sessions getting fired yesterday, and Matt Whitaker, former U.S. Attorney, Chief of Staff to Jeff Sessions, taking over as Acting Attorney General. Tom, we've got a couple things here, data points on Matt Whitaker to go over. In July of 2016, after James Comey said no reasonable prosecutor would bring a case against Hillary Clinton, Whitaker wrote an op-ed for USA Today and said, actually, no, that's not true. I'm a reasonable prosecutor. I would have brought that case against Hillary Clinton. I would have indicted her for that. Here's another one. In 2017, he was on CNN. This is cut 2. He was on CNN, and he talked about how, Bob Mueller should stay in the role for now, because he thinks that Bob Mueller is a man of good character. Here, listen.
I don't see any current reason or good reason that Bob Mueller shouldn't stay in that special counsel role. I think, from what I can tell, there has been an attempt over the last couple days to discredit or discount maybe some of the members of his team that he's assembled.
Some of them have given money to Democrats.
Right,
for president.
but at the same time, there is no honest person that sits in the world of politics and the world of law that can find anything wrong with Bob Mueller.
Okay, that was, I don't know what month that was in 2017, but that was at some point in 2017 he made that case.
Well, I'm not persuaded by that at all, and I don't know if he was speaking for the DOJ at that point or not.
No, he wasn't. He was not with the DOJ at that moment.
Look, in this town, Mueller is a saint. We're not allowed to say anything bad about him, but his FBI worked with Lois Lerner's IRS, try to figure out ways to put President Obama's political opponents in jail. He got 1 million pages of documents his agency did from the IRS. He had no right to under the law, had to return them and essentially apologize after that had happened, as the agency did. Ask the guy Mueller targeted in the anthrax investigation and hounded. Personally and directly, he supervised that.
Well,
look, Mueller it ran a big bureaucratic agency for years. He's like every other political official here in town, subject to the same sorts of criticisms, good and bad.
Yes. Well, by the time you get to August of 2017, you have Whitaker criticizing Mueller, saying he thinks the investigation is going too far. He wrote an op-ed for CNN saying looking into Trump's finances is way too far afield of concerns about the 2016 election, and that Mueller's investigation is going too far. And one other piece of information. Here's him in June of last year talking to us in the wake of James Comey's testimony before Congress about whether or not that testimony demonstrated obstruction by the president. Listen. So as a former U.S. attorney, you must have some sense, though, of whether or not we're closer to an obstruction of justice case after yesterday's testimony or further from it. How do you feel about that?
There is no criminal obstruction of justice charge to be had here. There's just the evidence is weak. No reasonable prosecutor would bring a case on what we know right now, and because it all boils down to what was the president's intent, and we really don't have any evidence of what the president's intent was. The investigation continues on. He didn't stop it. It's not stopped, and so ultimately, it ultimately is a question for the politicians and the public to decide whether they think something nefarious happened. But there's no criminal case that could be substantiated on these facts, no matter how good of a witness Jim Comey appears to be. And he was very impressive yesterday.
All right, Tom Fitton, knowing all of this, what do you think of Matt Whitaker so far?
He seems like it would be a good attorney general from my perspective, in the sense he's got the appropriate skepticism. Look, he's right, what he said yesterday. And if he's right, or what he said to you guys last year.
Right.
And if he still has that view, then he should stop Mr. Mueller from harassing the president right now about this very issue. They're still fighting and arguing about whether he's going to answering questions from the Mueller team about his decision to fire Comey. So that is illustrative of a very important issue, is that this attorney general, or the acting attorney general in the case of Rod Rosenstein, had let Mueller try to get into Mr. Trump's head about why he fired someone that he had a right to fire. Completely inappropriate.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We've got more with Tom Fitton coming up. All right, we're in studio with Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch, discussing Jeff Sessions' firing yesterday. I want to talk about replacements. The name that seems to be the front runner right now is Janice Rogers Brown. She served alongside Brett Kavanaugh, spoke to the White House about the job in the recent weeks, according to the Sacramento Bee. She's the front runner. Other names being floated: Chris Kobach, Pam Bondi, Alex Azar, former Attorney General William Barr, and Rudy Giuliani. Those are all the names that are being floated. What do you think?
I put my money on the current acting Attorney General.
Whitaker, really?
Nersha is always your friend in Washington, D.C. He'd be as controversial as any of the other names we're talking about here. The left is going to oppose whoever the president nominates and expect the Attorney General to be, of course, someone who acts like a Supreme Court justice, never really talks to the president about substantive matters, and that's obviously a non-starter. And Whitaker is a former U.S. attorney. He's been at the Justice Department a year plus now.
Yes.
And he seems to be simpatico with the president on these investigations and the way the Justice Department should be run, so we'll see.
But guess who has a firmer control in the Senate now? Oh, that'd be Trump. So, I mean, in terms of just getting nominees through, things are looking good for him.
That's right. So he may be able to get a more aggressive attorney general in from our perspective. Look, Sessions did a lot of good things as attorney general.
Yeah.
You know, other than letting an effort go forward out of his Justice Department that sought to overthrow the president illicitly, it was a pretty good attorney general.
Other than that, do we know who told or urged Jeff Sessions to recuse himself over the whole "I shook hands with Kislyak at a cocktail party that I don't remember"? As a senator, which is totally legal, do we remember who urged him to do that? I'm so curious to find out who that was, who urged him to do that, to recuse himself, because it was brilliant, because it cleared the way for the entire investigation for Mueller.
Well, I don't know who specifically, but I can characterize them: left-wing, DOJ, Democrat officials encouraged Mr. Sessions to recuse himself. Now, they're career civil servants and career bureaucrats, and but look, it's the left that controls the Justice Department at the operational level. They have a few political appointees who are conservative Republicans, and that's the way most agencies are these days.
Interesting.
Well, you already have Democrats promising to launch investigations, everyone going after the president over this and accusing him of obstruction of justice for deciding who works for him. We'll get into a lot of that as the weeks move along here. I'm sure that things will move quickly. Tom Fitton, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.